Mohan Kalyanaraman to make his presentation. Mohan, the stage is all yours.
To give you an update on the work that ExxonMobil and the open process automation have been doing in advancing the concept, right? So back in 2019, I was here with my colleague, and we presented an update on, what then was a little bit of a nascent initiative where ExxonMobil and partners had started the journey together, okay? But I think, 4 years hence, with the pandemic under our belt, I think we are in a different place now in terms of the open process automation initiative. So let me provide you a kind of a status recap and what I hope you will take away from this. So, really, we'll talk about the vision for the open process automation is really to have an open, interoperable, standards-based, secure process control architecture. Again, taking what has been traditionally a closed proprietary system and then moving it to a more open and interoperable system, right? And the reason we went into this was to introduce innovation, because really one of the factors that inhibits innovation, we felt, was the closed nature of the system. And especially with software-defined automation and so on becoming much more mainstream, it was not when we started the conversation. You can start to see how this will get us moving into that new space, right? So just as a background, so I'm been with ExxonMobil now for 27 years. So I worked on a variety of different functions. In the last 5 years or so, I've been working on open process automation. I'm the business lead for open process automation in ExxonMobil. I also co-chair the marketing and outreach for the forum, okay? So I wanted to give you a quick view of what we had been doing in this space. Okay, so in the last 7 years or so, ExxonMobil has been working to advance this concept, and now we are at a place where we can deploy this in a manufacturing facility. Okay, and also, like Mr. Raman said, we have both myself, we have our partners in this journey, and Petronas and Reliance, and we're going to have a talk today as well as tomorrow on OPA on this one, okay? So, and you'll also hear how the products are coming aligned with the OPA standards and how the ecosystem is beginning to form around this, okay? So that's the big update in this case, right? So what I hope you take away is that through the hard work and commitment of us and our partners and our supplier community, we are actually beginning to move this and create this ecosystem. And my call to you would be to say, okay, if you've been on the sidelines saying, does this activity have legs? I'm here to assure you that this activity is up and running. So it more than has legs, right? So I hope that I leave that message with you. Quick, okay, time check on this. Is it only 12 minutes left on this? Or just wanted to make sure we haven't gotten past slide 1. Okay, just to set the context for this, right? So in terms of energy transformation, Mr. Raman talked about the need that all companies have. I want to frame this in that energy transition context. So world needs more energy, but at the same time, we need to tackle the emissions associated with the energy, right? And so one of the threads that runs through this is now we're starting to talk about low carbon solutions. So these are some of the newer things: carbon sequestration, blue hydrogen, variety of colors of hydrogen that we talk about. We talk about lowering the carbon footprint, but at the same time, as manufacturers, we have to be cognizant of improved profitability. The two things that I want to highlight where open standards-based approaches will really help are really around workforce evolution, right? So our workforce empowerment, you can see that the newer generation, you don't want to set them in front of a 30-year-old system and say, learn this language and become an expert in this. Nobody wants to do that nowadays, right? So you want it to be standards-based, you want it to be state-of-the-art. And so we think that is a key driver for this. And supply chain disruptions. How many times have we heard supply chain disruptions in the last few years? Right? So I think becoming dependent on a single source makes you vulnerable. So these are some of the things that we highlight. So there is increased deployment of IT tools across our organization. And we had talked a lot about IT/OT integration in the past, but now this is happening and it's actually penetrating through the fleet, right? So we also talk about system orchestration, things that we never used to talk about in the OT world, right? And obviously the conference is titled around digital transformation initiatives, and that's happening more and more. And people have talked about AI and ML. It feels like forever, right? But now this is actually going beyond proof of concept into actual manufacturing operations. So we're beginning to see this happen in much more real time. And the other kind of increased threat that I would say is much more awareness on security, right? Cybersecurity is a key element. Secured by design is the way open standards are built. So you build it from the design onwards, and then not bolted on from later. Okay, so from power on is what we strive to do. So let me kind of quickly walk you through some of the. We talked about the vision for OPA, open, interoperable, secure, standards-based, right? So that's a driver. And our driver is to create additional value. So the Open Automation Forum actually went through and developed a set of guidelines or benefit cases for end users and suppliers as to why they should want to engage in OPAF. So one idea is if you break the hardware dependency, now you commoditize the hardware. Now you introduce more competition. Ultimately, winning by restricting competition is not really the way to do this. I mean, you've got to really go beyond that, deliver added value. And our suppliers recognize that, and they're well aware of this, right? As operators, we want to look at the life cycle, tackle the obsolescence challenge. A lot of us face this fleet of aging components, and we were not able to upgrade it as and when needed, because you really want to take advantage of all the computing power that's available right now, right? And so that is hard to do when the systems are much older and they're not readily upgradable. And we talked about one of the use cases for ExxonMobil is really the portability of applications. So when we talk about we want to write an application once, right? And we think that is a key differentiating advantage for ExxonMobil. We want to write it once. We want to port it across sites, across different systems. We don't want to have to rewrite it for every single system. So that's something that we really are looking forward to in this. And the concept of the App Store, right? And you've all heard about this, but we are actually beginning to realize this as we go along in this journey, okay? So I won't spend too much time on this. I think our colleague from Reliance, Ms. Sunita and Divyang are going to talk a little more about the forum and what the forum's approach is towards this. But I'll just highlight a little bit around the standards. So we are up to version 2.1 of the standards. So this is essential building blocks on communications, configuration portability, and controls, right? So these are things now we're beginning to see products aligned to these. I won't touch on the other aspects here in the interest of time, but we are working on application portability, orchestration, and physical platform interchangeability in this next version of the standards. Let me just point out one item here, which is the collaboration partnerships that we've established. Provides a legal framework for us to share with other operating companies our experience. And we did this because we wanted to make sure that we learn from each other in a non-competitive manner, but learn from each other and then accelerate the experience band, especially like Mr. Raman talked about, to climb that staircases, we really got to collectively share the experience rather than each of us go through the journey alone, right? All right, so here is a brief sort of timeline for how we went through this journey, right? So we had been at this effort for more than a decade now. So it started out with an initial sort of concept paper. We drew the conceptual architecture of this diagram, sort of knocking it off from the Purdue, multi-level architecture to more of a flat architecture, and locating the DCNs where they needed to be, and allowing for free data flow, right? And that enables your true digital transformation. So we came up with a conceptual architecture. We socialized this with a lot of other operating companies. We found they had the same pain points. We discussed with other industry participants, and we found out that this is not unique to the process control industry, but it's a challenge across a lot of industries. So telecom, in defense, where they had to rewrite applications over and over again to suit specific hardware. So I think from that, we partnered with the Open Group to form the Open Process Automation. It started off in late 2016 with about 57 companies. It's doubled in size now. We've got many operating companies across the globe, and you'll see a lot of thought leaders in the forum, working on this, developing the standards. So last 6 years, the forum has been developing, some of the standards, again, pandemic notwithstanding, right? But in parallel, what ExxonMobil did, we invested a lot of R&D dollars in showing that the feasibility of this concept is real, right? So what we did was to develop a proof of concept using Lockheed Martin as a systems integrator, taking heterogeneous components. At that time, it were kind of laboratory scale components, and bringing them together and having to do a lot of customization, but proving out that the quality attributes are real. So this will be the communications, controls, portability. So these are the quality attributes that we are after, and those are realizable, right? So after that, we said, okay, what's the next step in convincing ourselves that this can work, right? Because the proof of concept was based off of a simulation, but of a simulated output, right? It's all fine to do it in a simulated output, but are you comfortable enough to put it in a real system? So we took a pilot plant that had a legacy DCS controller and ripped it out and put an open automation system to be able to show the proof that it actually works. So this was a catalyst testing unit that we had worked on, and showed that we can put this into the catalyst testing unit. It runs at 360, 400 degrees Celsius, hydrogen sulfide, hydrogen, high pressures, 80 atmospheres. So all of the things that you would expect, hydrocarbons, right? So, and safety systems and things. So we felt comfortable enough to deploy it there. We deployed it, brought it up on stream, and ran for 3 months before we had to shut down for the pandemic, right? But so we felt comfortable enough to put it in a real operating unit. So again, it gives next level of comfort in here. Along with that, we started a test bed with Yokogawa as our systems integrator. So we put this test bed up in Woodlands next to the ExxonMobil campus. And the idea with the test bed was to now prepare for a field deployment. So we ran components that we had from different vendors and ran it through its paces, right? And because we don't have a full conformance program yet, so we were doing sort of the conformance runtime to say, are we comfortable enough to deploy it in the field? And so after we've gained enough comfort from that, we actually are now progressing a field trial. And I'll talk about that just in the next slide, okay? And the idea is moving from the field trial to market, full market adoption through not just ExxonMobil, but all through the other industrial partners that we have. Okay? So here's a little bit of a description of the field trial. So this is a manufacturing facility in the US Gulf Coast where we are taking out the existing DCS and PLCs, and we are putting components based off of version 2.1 of the standard. Okay? It's a single operator, single console operation, about 2,500 IOs and 100 control loops. So the engineering has been done. The detailed design has been done. So we're in the project execution phase right now. So with a startup schedule for 2023 and project closeout in 2024. And as part of this, we want to share the information with the members as well as non-members to show that this is, again, we're comfortable enough to do this in a real setting, right? So this talks, ultimately this is about realizing business value, right? So when we execute the project, we really got to make sure that we deliver the business benefit. So when we do this DCS and PLC replacement, we're looking at, we chose the site because we said, okay, we need to be able to show added benefits. It's not simply a replacement in kind, right? It has to have return. And so that's what the idea behind choosing the site was, to make sure that we get the added return. At the same time, the idea is to say, hey, we're not, going off and putting it in a, you have to do the risk-appropriate deployment, right? So we have done that aspect of this, okay? So let me maybe wrap up quickly, okay? So, my call to you would be to say, yeah, if you've been on the sidelines observing OPAF, please come and join us. The road has been paved, right? So now you can start to take the benefit from it. And when we started on this, there was always a skepticism, like, yeah, this is never going to work, right? And reminded of one of the quotes from Nelson Mandela says, everything is impossible until it is done, right? I think when we look at why companies engage on this, it's really around innovation. I mean, I think that's the key driver for this. And if you can choose to innovate or you can choose to wait, right? I think that's the choice that we all face as manufacturers. And if you choose to embrace that, you will see, you could change the conversation that you have within your own companies. And, it goes from, no, we can't do that, to, why can't I do that, right? I think that's the real place where we want to get to with this, okay? So, I won't read through all of this here, but idea is, look, it's more than ExxonMobil. We need the industry to work together with us, and that's the way we win. And you can see suppliers beginning to embrace this in a much more open way, and you can talk to some of the suppliers. At the exhibit, you will see the open process automation member signs for a lot of the suppliers. So I think we're all on this journey together. So I'll leave you with that thought. And any questions, please come and talk to us. We're available.